right, so buckle up, listeners. Today, we're going deep, really deep, into how the modern U.S. Army operates.
That's right.
We're talking ADP 50.
ADP 50.
The Army's doctrinal guide to, well, mission command, the operations process, all that good stuff.
All the good stuff. It's not just, a manual.
Right.
It's philosophy, really. It's
Right.
about understanding not just what the Army does, but the strategy, the reasoning behind it.
The why.
The why, exactly.
Okay, so if I'm a soldier, right, and I'm picking up ADP 50 for the first time,
Yeah,
this isn't just about, like, learning how to, march in formation.
you're catching on quick. ADP 50, it's about empowering leaders at every level to think critically and make decisions, even in those, really challenging situations.
And speaking of challenging, one of the big, I guess, overarching ideas in ADP 50 is this concept of unified land operation.
Unified land operations, yeah.
What exactly does that even mean? Like, in practical terms, paint a picture for me.
Okay, imagine this. You're engaged in offensive operations, right? But at the same time, you're also conducting these defensive maneuvers to protect civilians that are caught in the middle of it all.
Okay.
And to top it all off, you're coordinating with, international partners, civilian organizations to try to stabilize the entire region. That, in a nutshell, is unified land operations.
Wow. Okay. So it's like juggling chainsaws while riding a unicycle, it sounds like.
It's a good way to put it.
So what's changed in warfare that requires, this kind of multitasking, this incredibly complex approach?
Well, the battlefield, it's not what it used to be, right?
Right.
You've got these non-state actors constantly shifting alliances, and don't even get me started on the information overload that's constantly coming at you.
Yeah.
The days of these, clear-cut battle lines,
Yeah.
they're long gone.
So how does ADP 50, I guess, equip soldiers to operate in that kind of environment?
Right.
Because it sounds like, instinct can only get you so far, right?
Instinct's important, sure, but ADP 50, it provides, a framework for making those really sound judgments in the heat of the moment. And it really all boils down to this concept called mission command.
Okay, let's unpack that a little bit.
Yeah.
What's the essence of mission command?
So at its core, mission command is about trust. It's about this shared understanding between commanders and their subordinates.
Okay.
Commanders, they clearly communicate their intent. This is the why.
The why of the mission.
Right, the why of the mission. And then they trust their subordinates to figure out the how. How are we going to accomplish this mission based on what's happening on the ground?
So it's about empowering soldiers, even at the, the lowest levels, to take initiative and make decisions when the situation demands it.
Exactly. ADP 50 recognizes that, look, in today's world, things move fast, right?
Right.
Waiting for orders from higher ups, that's just not going to cut it.
Right. That's a pretty radical departure, I think, from, kind of the traditional, top-down military structure that we see in the movies.
It is. It requires a certain mindset, what ADP 50 calls critical and creative thinking.
So it's not just about following orders. It's about understanding the commander's intent and then adapting to achieve that objective, even when, because let's face it, the unexpected always happens.
All the time.
Yeah.
And this adaptability, this is key. And that's where the 4 phases of what ADP 50 calls the operations process come into play.
Okay, so walk me through it. We've got these 4 phases. Let's start with that first one, planning. What makes planning in the context of ADP 50 different?
Sure. So it's more than just, your maps and timelines.
Right.
While those are important, of course, ADP 50 really emphasizes anticipating those challenges that are going to pop up and having backup options,
Yeah.
You need to be prepared to pivot, to adjust your approach based on what the battlefield throws at you because it's always changing.
It's like you have to be thinking on your feet constantly.
Oh, absolutely. And that's where the preparation phase comes in. This is your rehearsals, your simulations, your training exercises. It's about being so familiar with the plan that you can adapt, you can overcome, even when things get really, really chaotic.
So preparation is about building that foundation of knowledge and experience that allows for this, effective decision-making when you're actually out in the field.
Exactly. And then comes the execution phase. This is where we put the plan into action, and this is where that trust, that shared understanding between those commanders and their subordinates, this is where it's truly tested.
Because no plan survives contact with the enemy or however the saying goes, right?
Right. Things change, the enemy adapts. That's why ADP 50 stresses flexibility and initiative at all levels.
So you're constantly evaluating, making adjustments, and communicating those adjustments to your team.
Exactly. And then finally, we have the assessment phase. After the operation, It's so important to take the time to analyze what worked, what didn't, and why.
You're always learning, always getting better.
Always improving.
So it's not just about completing the mission. It's about learning from that experience and then using that for the next one.
That's the heart of ADP 50. It's about constantly evolving, always refining your understanding of how things work and adapting to this ever-changing, chaotic nature of warfare.
And you know what? It sounds like this whole operations process, it's a valuable framework for any leader, not just those, on the battlefield.
It's true. The principles of ADP 50, they can be applied to so many situations, really any situation where adaptability, critical thinking, and just clear, effective communication are key.
So we've established that adaptability initiative, those are crucial in this new world of unified land operations. But how does ADP 50 equip soldiers with the actual tools to make it all happen?
Now, that's where things get really interesting. We're talking about a whole set of tools, like analytical tools, different processes. We're talking things like intelligence preparation of the battlefield, which we call IPB.
IPB, right.
We're talking risk management, knowledge management. Each of these plays a crucial role.
So let's break those down one by one, starting with IPB. What does preparing the battlefield actually entail from an intelligence perspective?
So it's about knowing the battlefield like the back of your hand, but it's also about understanding the human terrain.
Okay.
It's not just about the physical ground. IPB involves looking at everything, enemy capabilities, what they're going to do, the political and social dynamics.
So it's not just about knowing like where the enemy is, but it's about understanding who they are, what motivates them, how they might react in different situations.
You got it.
Okay, so we've got our intel gathered, we understand the operational environment. What's next?
Information collection. ADP 50 is all about constantly gathering, and this is so important, constantly analyzing information.
Right.
And it's not just from, one source. We're talking reconnaissance patrols, signal intercepts, even open source information like social media.
Okay.
It's about having your finger on the pulse.
Yeah. So it's like having your finger on the pulse of the battlefield, always looking for those little bits of information to inform your decisions.
Yes, and once you have that information, that's when you move on to targeting.
Okay, and this is where we start talking about actually like engaging with the enemy, right?
In a way, yeah. But remember, ADP 50, it emphasizes precision and purpose in everything.
Right.
Targeting isn't just about blowing things up. It's about achieving a very specific outcome, whether that's neutralizing a specific target, disrupting their logistics, maybe even influencing their decisions.
So it's about using all the tools you have,
Right.
whether it's, kinetic, non-kinetic, to achieve your objective,
Exactly. And of course, all of this is happening in an environment with a lot of risk.
which is why ADP 50 really stresses the importance of risk management.
He's got it.
Break it down for me. How does ADP 50 approach this idea of risk management?
Well, it's about first identifying those potential hazards. Then you have to assess how likely they are to happen, what kind of impact they might have, and then you come up with strategies to, mitigate those risks. But you have to do it without putting the mission in jeopardy.
So it's about making calculated decisions, but in a chaotic environment.
That's a good way to put it. And finally, we have what might be the most crucial element of all, knowledge management.
Okay, I'll be honest, that one sounds a little, I don't know, bureaucratic for the battlefield. How does knowledge management actually translate to, the real world of combat?
Think of it this way. In the heat of battle, a single piece of information, but it has to be the right information shared at the right time with the right people.
Like,
That can mean the difference between victory and defeat.
right.
Knowledge management is about making sure that information flows easily and efficiently across all levels of command.
So it's about like breaking down those silos and just fostering a culture of information sharing.
Exactly. And tying it all together is this concept of battle rhythm.
Battle rhythm. Okay. That sounds a little more like a musical term than a military one, honestly.
It does, but think of it this way. Battle rhythm, it's the heartbeat of an operation. It's the steady cadence of meetings, reports, communication that keeps everyone on the same page and moving forward.
So it's about establishing a predictable tempo for operations, even in an unpredictable environment.
Precisely. And that predictability, the shared understanding, it actually helps adaptability. It gives everyone a common framework for, making adjustments as the situation changes.
That's fascinating. So it's not just about sticking to the plan. It's about having a shared understanding of how and when to deviate from the plan.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've covered a lot here. We've talked about mission command, the operations process, all these supporting tools, IQB, knowledge management. What's the common thread, the
So
thing that ties all of these elements together?
it all comes back to understanding the operational environment. And ADP 50, it goes beyond just, knowing where the enemy is on a map. It's about understanding the ridiculously complex interplay of factors that can shape the battle space.
And those factors are.
ADP 50 identifies 8 key elements: political, military, economic, social, information, infrastructure, physical environment, and time.
Okay, there's a lot to unpack there.
There is a lot. We call it PMEIPT for short.
PMESAPT.
It's catchy, right.
Got it. Okay. So break it down for me. Why are these 8 factors so important? Why do we care?
Let's say hypothetically you're deployed to this region and there's a lot of civil unrest.
Okay.
Understanding the political landscape, who are the major players, what are their motivations, that's crucial to figuring out how you're going to proceed.
So it's not enough to just know who to fight. You need to understand the why behind the fight.
Precisely. And then there's the economic factors. Are there any economic grievances that are adding fuel to the fire? Could targeting certain economic levers maybe de-escalate the situation? These are all questions that understanding the operational environment can help answer.
It sounds like you're talking about a much more, I don't know, holistic, I guess, approach to warfare.
You could say that. ADP 50 recognizes that today's battlefields are just so complex, so interconnected. To be successful, you need to understand not just the military aspects of the conflict, but also the political, economic, social, even informational dimensions.
And what about time? That's in there too, right?
Time is critical, yeah. It influences everything we do.
Okay.
For example, the enemy might view time very differently than we do, or the situation on the ground could change really quickly, which means we need to be ready to adjust those plans.
So time is both a constraint and an opportunity.
Exactly. And by understanding how time affects the operational environment, we can make more informed decisions and hopefully gain a tactical advantage.
This is all incredibly insightful. But, at the end of the day, how does it translate into the actions of, an individual soldier? How does PMPT actually play out in the middle of all the chaos?
That's a great question, and it's one that we're going to explore further in part 2 of our deep dive into ADP 50.
Ooh, a cliffhanger. All right, well, listeners, you're going to have to come back for the next part to get the rest of the story.
So we left off talking about PMISI-PT
PMECPT, right?
and how important it is to really understand those 8 factors, right?
Right.
To really grasp the operational environment.
Because, like we said, knowing the terrain is about more than just knowing where the hills and the rivers are.
Right.
It's about understanding the people, what they believe, what they're afraid of, the politics, the culture.
On the 9 yards.
Yeah, everything that might, throw a wrench in the plan.
Exactly. And that understanding, it can have a direct impact on the decisions you make in the field.
Okay.
Let's say you're trying to, win over a local population. Knowing their social structure, what they're upset about, what they're afraid of,
Okay.
that's just as important as knowing, where the enemy has their tanks parked.
It's that whole idea of winning hearts and minds, right?
Precisely.
Like,
Just territory.
And to really bring it home, how PMREC-PT plays out when things get real.
Okay.
Imagine this.
Yeah.
You're leading a squad on patrol,
Okay.
and you come across this group of civilians,
Right.
and they seem agitated, on edge.
Okay.
Now, a leader who's not really in tune with the local situation,
Right.
they might just see, potential hostiles.
Yeah. You get jumpy.
But because you took the time to understand the social dynamics at play,
Right.
you realize
Okay.
these folks are upset about a drone strike that happened a few days ago,
Okay.
one that maybe caused civilian casualties.
That's a tough situation.
It is. And instead of making things worse,
Right.
you use your knowledge, of the culture, of local customs,
Right.
to de-escalate the situation and maybe even get some intel out of it. Who knows?
Exactly.
Wow.
It's about seeing the bigger picture.
So PMECT.
Yeah.
It's not like some abstract thing.
Right.
It's about making decisions in the moment that could save lives.
It's a literal lifesaver.
Okay, so we've got, this good understanding now of PMEPT and
Yeah.
why it's so important.
Absolutely.
But let's shift gears a little bit here
Okay.
and talk about another, I think, really key idea in ADP 5LO,
Yeah.
the commander's intent.
Ah, yes, the commander's intent.
What is that? Why is that so important?
It's absolutely crucial, okay? This is like the North Star for the whole operation.
The North Star. Okay.
It's not just about, go capture that hill or hold this position.
Right.
It's about The why.
The why.
Why is this mission important? What are we trying to achieve strategically?
And why is it so important for every soldier to understand that why, that commander's intent?
Because, let's face it, in the chaos of battle, things rarely go according to plan.
Oh, yeah.
And when that plan inevitably goes out the window,
Right.
the commander's intent, it's what allows soldiers to think for themselves, to adapt, to still get the job done.
Okay, so even when it hits the fan,
Yeah.
they know the bigger picture,
Oh.
and they can make their own judgment calls.
Exactly. If they understand the ultimate goal,
Right.
they can improvise, they can make adjustments, they can still succeed.
So it's about giving them the freedom, but also the responsibility
Yeah.
to make those tough choices.
It takes a lot of trust.
It does?
The commander is essentially saying, I trust you to do the right thing, even when I'm not there to tell you what the right thing is.
That's a powerful concept.
It is, and it requires a lot of, competence from every soldier.
Yeah, they've got to know their stuff.
And that's why ADP 50 emphasizes constant learning.
Always be learning.
Professional development is all about empowering soldiers to be the best they can be.
Okay, so it's not just about following orders.
No.
It's about taking ownership of the mission. Exactly, and that ownership, that willingness to step up,
Right.
that's what makes the US Army, such a force to be reckoned with.
It's interesting. We're talking about military doctrine here, this very specific manual.
Right.
But ADP 50, it seems to have a lot to say about leadership in general.
It really does, because at the end of the day, warfare,
Right.
it's a human endeavor. It's
Right.
about people.
Yeah.
And victory, it depends on individuals, their ability to think critically, to work together, to adapt when everything's going sideways.
So ADP 50,
Yeah.
it's not just about rules and procedures.
No.
It's about building effective leaders.
Exactly.
Leaders who can handle, chaos and uncertainty.
Who thrive on it. Even
Right.
That's a great way to put it.
So we've covered a lot of ground of
Yeah.
adaptability, PM, APO, PT, commander's intent.
Big stuff.
But how does it all come together when the bullets start flying?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question.
How do you cut through all the noise, all the pressure, and make the right call?
Well, experience is key, of course.
Right.
Training, trusting your buddies.
Trust your gut.
But ADP 50, it does offer some guidance, and we call this battlefield visualization.
Battlefield visualization. Okay, I like the sound of that already.
Catchy, right?
Yeah, break it down for me. What is that?
It's about creating a mental picture in your head, a picture of the battle space.
Yep.
But it's more than just knowing, where your unit is, where the enemy is on a map.
Right.
It's about thinking ahead, trying to anticipate what the enemy's going to do,
Okay.
understanding how the terrain might help you or hurt you,
Okay.
and basically having a plan for any situation that might pop up.
So it's like running simulations in your mind
Yeah,
before the action even starts.
exactly. The better, the operational environment, the more
Mhm.
accurate your visualization is going to be.
And the better decisions you'll make when it counts.
Precisely.
This is fascinating stuff.
Yes.
But, it makes me wonder, how do you actually develop this battlefield visualization?
That's a good question.
Is it just something, that some people are good at,
Yeah.
or is it something you can train for?
Another great question, and it just so happens.
Wow.
That's exactly what we're going to be diving into in the final part of our deep dive into ADP 50.
Ooh. All right, listeners,
Mm.
you're going to have to stick around to find out.
Mm.
Okay, so last time we were talking about battlefield visualization, right?
Yeah.
And how important it is for making those split-second decisions when you're in the field.
Absolutely.
But you kind of left me hanging there a little bit.
Did I?
You did, with the whole is this something you can actually train for?
Right, right.
Or are some soldiers, just born with this sixth sense, this ability to see how things are going to play out?
It's definitely not something you're born with.
Okay, good to know.
It's a skill.
Yeah.
You hone it, you refine it through experience, through repetition.
Okay.
And it all goes back to, you guessed it, understanding that operational environment.
PMCPT.
PM, ESI, PT, my favorite alphabet soup.
Right, all those factors.
Yeah, the more ingrained those are in your mind,
Yeah.
the easier it becomes to see the connections, the potential problems, the opportunities.
So it's like those, chess masters you see, playing a dozen games at once, blindfolded.
Right.
It's not magic.
Yeah.
It's just they have this deep, almost intuitive understanding of how the pieces move.
Exactly. And just like chess,
Yeah.
battlefield visualization, it gets better the more you practice.
Well, how do you practice that? I mean, other than, obviously real-world experience.
Well, after-action reviews are huge at this work.
AOs.
Yep.
So it's not enough to, just go through the mission.
Right.
You have to actually sit down. You have to think about it.
Reflect.
Yeah, what went
What
well?
could have gone better?
What did you miss?
Why did you make the decisions you made?
Right. So it's about turning that experience, the good and the bad,
Yeah.
into actual knowledge.
And then taking that knowledge and applying it to the next mission, the next firefight.
So you're constantly learning. You're
Mm.
constantly getting better.
That's the goal.
And ADP 5.0, it's like a framework for doing that.
It gives you the tools,
Yeah.
mental models.
That's what I find so interesting about all this. We're talking about military doctrine here.
Right.
Very specific stuff.
Sure.
But these principles, right? Adaptability,
Yeah. Adaptability.
critical thinking, continuous learning.
Those are universal.
It's not just about the battlefield.
Absolutely not. I mean, think about it.
Right.
Leading a squad, leading a team at work, it's all about processing information, making decisions under pressure, communicating clearly.
So if our listeners take away one thing from all of this, from our deep dive on ADP 5.0,
Yeah.
what would you want it to be?
It's more than just a rule book, okay?
Yeah.
ADP 5.0,
Right.
it's a call to action
A call to action.
for every soldier at every level.
Okay.
To be a leader, to own it, to think critically, to adapt, to not shy away from the tough stuff.
To embrace the unexpected.
Exactly, because that's the world we live in now.
It is.
And the stakes, they couldn't be higher.
Couldn't agree more. Well, this has been fantastic. Really appreciate you breaking all this down for us.
Happy to be here.
And listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into ADP 5.0. Keep those brains sharp, keep those boots polished. We'll see you next time.